board meeting, we spoke about the meeting to discuss the face mask policy at Riverside and have further discussion about what that might look like until the end of this year and more specifically the start of next year. We have Ron Graham, Lake County General Health District Commissioner here as well, that he might be able to answer some questions the board might have. So it's just general discussion at this point. I don't know when the board members would like to start discussing the policy. I can give you a refresher. In August, we received an order from the ODH where everyone had to wear masks, and that's what we did. We put it in our policy, and although some things have changed throughout the year, that order, from what I understand, is still in place. And at this point, we have 22 days left. I'm not so sure if it's worth not, requiring them. We have relieved our students of the shields, and we have those as well. Students are now able to go into recess without masks outside. They're also allowed not to have shields or masks during lunchtime, but we still have them in the classroom. Reason for that is there's a lot more space outside, there's more circulation outside. In the cafeteria, there's more space outside as well, or in the cafeteria. In the classrooms are relatively small, considering we have 25 kids in the classroom. We still want to protect not only the families of the kids, but also our staff as well. And that's where we are with it. I've received not really many calls or emails about the masks. Early on, we had a few people that were concerned about them. I have to say that in as much as I received input and suggestions from parents, sometimes I agree with some of the things that they were saying, some that I don't, but it really, to me, doesn't hold a heck of a lot of water when I have to make decisions based upon what I think is best for the kids. And that determination has to come from some type of authority. Not necessarily a parent, like I said, whether I agree or disagree. What I've done is recommended policy based upon what I'm hearing from the Ohio Department of Health and also our local health district as well. That have been very responsive and very helpful during this time. Also had a meeting on Thursday with my counterparts in Lake County and also Geauga County with superintendents. There's not a lot of decisions that are made yet for next year, and it didn't appear that any other school district was going to relieve their students of the mask mandate until the end of the year. Like I said, we have 22 days left.
Great. All right, so
why don't we go ahead and I'm going to start with this, just to set the stage,
sure.
and then we will ask Mr. Graham for his perspective as well, obviously. So as I look at where we are and trying to figure out what's going on for, potentially this year, but really probably for next year, I think we have to look at two questions and find out, thread those two questions. The first question is, fundamentally, have masks in school had an overall positive impact on student learning? The other question is, can we ever get to zero risk regarding the coronavirus? And I think most people are going to answer no to both those questions, right? So we're never, the masks were detrimental, I think we'd all agree with that, and we're never going to get to zero risk. So we've got to figure out how to thread that needle so that we allow education to proceed in Riverside in a straightforward and positive manner, and take care of people along the way. Obviously, we have staff and things like that we need to work with. But if we are able to thread that needle, we're going to be in a situation where we have mitigated things to the maximum extent possible. So one of the things I wanted to point out further in this is, what really are the impacts of the coronavirus to those who are school age? And these stats I pulled out, I don't know how well you can see them, but when it comes to hospitalizations, Lake County's had 772 as of April 16th. We had 27 residents or citizens who were 0 to 19 as part of that 772, so it's a very low percentage. When you look at the average age of the hospitalizations, they're 65 years old. When you ask the question, how many of them had pre-existing conditions, the answer is 49%. The next category, so we have hospitalizations and we have ICU admissions. We've had 99 total cumulative ICU admissions in Lake County. I don't have the stats for whether or not any of them were from school age, from 0 to 19. And then the next category I think that has the most solid data is the question of how many deaths occurred. And so total deaths reported from COVID, cumulative in Lake County, 380. None of them were from school-age children. The average age of cases who died from COVID is 79. The percent of them who had pre-existing conditions is 47. And then the average age for cumulative cases is 44. So what I'm trying to drive home is that when you look at the effects of the coronavirus on school-age populations, it's not nothing, but it's very low. And so, in my opinion, much of what has happened, frankly, has not necessarily been based on the science, but based on overwrought concern, which has frankly developed into fear in some cases. And so I wanted to establish that these students are not a prime, they're not a prime target, if you will, of the virus. So I think that's an important thing to establish. There are other things, there are a whole lot of other data, but to me, this data is the most important and what we need to focus on as we consider potentially going forward. The other thing that comes up in coronavirus overall is fairly minimal with the school-age children, but the other question is what happens in the dynamic of the virus between the students and the teachers. And so what I'm showing up on the board, on the projector, is a study of 3 studies, basically. It's a review of 3 studies by the University of Minnesota. And the 3 studies are North Carolina, Sweden, and Norway. And in summary, all of them showed that there is de minimis transfer of the virus from students to teachers and from teachers to students. To be clear, the study that was in North Carolina didn't have the protocols in place. Right? So they were social distance, they were masked. The Norway study does not say whether or not they were masked. They just talk about the results of whether or not the coronavirus was transferred from students. And then the Sweden study, there were no masks involved. So when you look at this in total, there's good evidence that it's not nothing, but it is a low risk environment. And so what I'm hoping to establish here and then have some dialogue about, and we can maybe ask Mr. Grant to join the conversation as well and get his perspective on how he sees things developing, is it's relatively low risk to students. We have data that shows it is limited risk to teachers. And I think that what we definitively know is that when we talk about all of the things that have occurred, the shutdowns, the lockdowns, the lack of school, the wearing of the mask, where we are with going into summer school, having to play catch up with many students, this was devastating, right? So in the conversation that we have about safety, which is important, we never talk about the costs of what is happening with the students and their learning. So there is certainly we are right to be protective of everybody involved, but by the same token, we have an obligation, in my view, to thread that needle so that students are able to thrive and to learn. And we have short-term issues, there's no doubt, but we're going to have to learn. Are we going to wear the mask forever? Are we going to wear the mask forever? I say we don't. We need to figure out how to live with the coronavirus. And we need to, I think a lot of it is fear. We have used, fear has led us to do things that have been detrimental, in my opinion, to all the school-age children, and maybe beyond that, for last year and this year. Their existence, their experience, their ability to learn has been diminished because of our reaction. We also want to bring in play the fact that things have changed since we first put these things in place. We understand better the coronavirus. A lot of the data we didn't have, now we have that data. Further, we also have vaccines that are in place. So those who want the vaccine, we now have reduced risk. So I would make the case that we're never going to get to zero risk. We know that the mask is detrimental to education. We've got to figure out how to thread that needle to mitigate the risk as much as possible, but to allow for effective learning in our classrooms.
I just want to let everybody know I need to leave at 6:15 because I have a work meeting at 6:30. So I'm sorry, 6:30, because I have a work meeting at 6:45. And so in that light, I would like to give Mr. Graham an opportunity to give us some information on his perspective. I also want to say that, I understand that, you have requested that we have this meeting, and studies are studies, and there's data on all kinds of, different aspects. And so I just want to say that thanks for the data, but I think from my perspective, we can pull data on all sides of the story. So I kind of would like to give Mr. Graham the opportunity to say what he has to say so that I can hear what he's going to say before I have to.
Yeah, thank you. This is a clarification. All of the data on this page is from the Lake County Health District. I just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Guidance to the general public, with the Board of Health making a statement based on the science that we had, and unfortunately some of the data and science we do not have, which lends a little bit more to where Tom is headed. We want to be able to help make sure that we're buying unnecessary goods that can go back to teacher salaries, to cost field trips. We want to make sure that we're making sure that it's the best learning environment. The Board of Health does believe face-to-face learning is the best. There's certainly concerns, I think, across the board that 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever that percentage may be, of people, children learning behind a computer, interacting with a mask on, has not only health implications, but certainly unknown mental health implications. And so what we're trying to do is collect all that data from tangible data. That's the easy part. The part we don't know is how much of an impact this has to the students' confidence, how it's strain on parents. Suicides are up, not in this category. Domestic violence is up, divorce rates are up. All those other factors we know, either it's the economic impact, the fear of the virus, or it impacts these children. So we're trying to do our best to kind of get that crystal ball out and go with it. An important factor is the vaccination, at least for Lake County. 60 and above are nearing 80% vaccination rates, 65 and above. So a lot of the discussion, I try to keep it in perspective, is that we wanted to stop this wave. We wanted to stop over-surgery, overrun the hospitals. We wanted to preserve our ventilators. We wanted to prepare and make sure we eliminated any deaths that we could. So we know that it can impact the older population. Tom's numbers are correct. If it's coming into the schools, it's coming into the schools through some contact. It's most likely outside of the classroom. Early on, we identified community spread. Contact tracing became ineffective when parents would not tell us what party they went to, what friends they were with. We were probably pioneer in taking those resources and reallocating them to vaccination versus contact tracing. Because at that time, there was no benefit to anybody. We weren't getting information. Mother, father call their friends and say, hey, look, we were positive. But we weren't getting that data, so we had to adjust. It's unprecedented then. What we want to try to do again is to see what impact is going on, how many kids' grades are slipping. As true as the absenteeism, everybody, I think, trial by fire, how challenging, video conferencing can be. technology alone is a good big jump of how Department of Health can never get a conference call right. We never understood why. When we try, you really see that there's always some problem. The more people in that meeting, the more background feedback you get. They forget that they're on camera. I don't believe that that's the best learning environment for children. So really happy to come out here and talk to you guys, answer your questions if you want. But on the data side, again, it's not impacting the students, certainly not the younger ones. Athletics is going on, and there's so many different interpretations that the state has, sector by sector. I really do cringe. You have the NFL draft, they always wear masks. You know, for a while, weddings and funerals were held harmless for me at that time. While they were wearing masks being wrestled, but you can't shake hands. So somewhere where there are things we would like to be, and this is the way things really are. And again, we're trying to close that gap on, you know, the cost containment. I know you guys have teacher unions and all those human resources. The vaccine is effective, 90 to 95%. There cannot be guarantees. Parents have to make a decision, and we just want to make sure we try to give the best advice, guidance, anticipation of vaccine. Sooner it'll be 12 to 15 being vaccinated. Herd immunity is somewhere between 70 to 85%. Nobody wants to put a number on that. We roughly use 75%, which is pretty darn good. The problem is if we don't get our children vaccinated, it means 100% of everybody else above the age of 16 has to get vaccinated to get in the herd immunity because of those numbers. It's almost impossible. So we really want to have the discussion is these masks, so many non-tangible things right now. Getting falling behind in reading scores for a year because they haven't catch up, falling behind in math, breaking up a family, all those kind of soft things are very, very hard to quantify, but I think they're real. And we're just trying to find how can we get some information to you quickly by the end of the month, some guidance from the health district to make you feel better. We all have prosecutors and attorneys that weigh in on this, recommendations, not mandates. Senate Bill 22 changed that even more. So again, I think the discussion is important, and you got to find a middle ground, and it may not be the same for everybody. But just here today to help walk through the discussion if we can. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that you covered things pretty well. So I know that you are in, the public lots, you talk to people, and have you received any feedback or perspective from parents or others? I know obviously you talked a lot with the superintendents and what have you, but if you talk to the general population, you got a sense of what's going on there?
Yeah, it's certainly been a shift. So recently we put a small focus group together, and at the beginning of this was always about the masking and the mask usage. About a year into it, it's already become about getting rid of the mask for the most complaints that we have for various reasons. Allergy season, medical conditions, businesses. The young child was 4 years old, broke down because they couldn't use the library to get a book because they didn't have a mask on, so you should guidance on that. So really, the shift has been, I think, away from the fear of the mask to the shift to, I think it causes more problems in my family with my child than it's solving. As we see the case rate kind of go up and down, we know it's going to be here for a while. Chikungunya is here, West Nile virus is here, there's many things. And so I think the population we're trying to protect, which was really grandma and grandpa, those extended families, they're now vaccinated, at least 78% and climbing of those individuals. I do agree that maybe in the May is too soon to drop everything, but I think we need to have a good plan for the fall. We can always change it if we need to, based on the data. Again, that's the easy part of outbreaks and transmission, should know that very, very well. Again, we just need to probably help you make a decision and what you guys are able to do. Local control. The state's behind our guidance for senior centers. They're behind on some of the other guidance for crossing is not addressed, just left off the hook. So we've exercised a lot of local authority, local judgment. I think we need to continue to do that. But you guys certainly have an obligation and interest in doing the same thing. It may not always align with what we have there to help the district.
Some are trying to balance between, safety protocols and trying to give the students some sense of normalcy. It's very difficult this year, Nothing that I've heard yet so far I disagree with, in terms of how difficult it is to try to educate kids under these types of circumstances. I'm not just talking about masks, I'm talking about making us involved with the COVID. The warden WRC was split, and I fought tooth and nail to make sure that we're at least giving students the opportunity. I mean, we have to at least try. And, you know, if things don't work out, then you change course. So we were able to get through the sports. We were able now to have a few concerts. We just had prom this past Saturday. We did get rid of some of the extra protocols that we had in place, like I said, with the shields. I know those weren't popular at all. Aside from having any issues about distance again, I don't intend to bring those back unless I'm forced to. Doesn't work out all that well. Kids are starting to move from class to class at the elementary level, which they weren't able to do before. They were, I don't know, basically, but they were in the classrooms and other times throughout the day. So we're trying right now, like I said, what we have.
Classrooms are moving around to
We've started
different
to-
classrooms if they have,
Art, music.
no, just that, not like if a child is being prepped in, say, second grade reading and he's a first grader. Is that child going to that second grade room?
I'm not exactly sure if every single school is doing the exact same thing because of space issues. The newer buildings were able to do it because we do have designated places for art, for music, and it's a little bit more difficult at Melridge and at Buckeye, but we're trying the best we can to try to get back to normal where kids are moving from classroom to classroom. Again, recess, they had masks on for the longest time, they don't anymore. And also, they were eating in the classrooms, and now we're getting them into the cafeterias to be able to spread them out a little bit. So again, trying to get back to that normalcy. This isn't anything any of us want. I mean, I don't like the masks either, just like anybody else. It's one of those things where, again, at the beginning of the school year, we're trying to put the protocols in place to try to protect the kids and something, that we're not 100% sure about. We have 22 days left, and like I said, although I think we ought to make decisions based upon what's, best as a whole, I think with the idea of removing the mask with just those many days left would probably be a mistake. And the only reason I say that is because in the beginning of the year, we put out our plan for the kids to come back. And we listed all the protocols. A lot of parents made those decisions based upon what we had in that handbook. And the handbook said that the kids were required to have masks, and we also had test shields, but we did remove those.
Do we anticipate making updates to that plan over the summer in cooperation with the health department? I'm assuming that we'll have some time to be able to do that over
We
the
will,
summer.
but I mean, it's how much the target has moved throughout. We're sitting here now in early May. I don't think we can make any decisions based upon what it's going to look like in September, or late August. To me, it's almost like we want the least restrictive environment. And that would mean looking at all that's out there in terms of, what the virus looks like. We're gonna, and this is one thing I want to mention to the board as well, is along with other school districts in Lake County, we're looking to provide at least the space here for Riverside parents who want their student to get vaccinated. They have to be 16, 17 years old. And we're looking at 3 parents respond that they want their kids to have the vaccine. Now, we have to reach out to those same to make sure that they're still interested, and we have to get forms out to them to make sure. But I just want to make sure the board understands, because I did mention this at our last board meeting, that just like many other school districts, we're going to provide that opportunity for the parents that want their children vaccinated, 16 to 17-year-olds.
So, if I could jump in, I know from being on the board for this whole period of time that we have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, and I do want to commend the administration and teachers and other staff for jumping through a lot of hoops. Teacher Appreciation Day was, last week, and and we all, I think, left a message, and we're sincere in all of the comments, because this has been a very challenging year. There's no two ways about it. And so, I want to make that point.
And the thing is, it's just time and organization, trying to get our ducks in a row here in order to, start the school year. But to be perfectly honest with you, it couldn't have been this smooth without our staff cooperating, and also our parents. I have to tell you that, think about it, you're going to school, you got the mask on, you got the shields on, we have all these new rules, there's the idea that there might not be activities and everything else. Last year we didn't have a real graduation, we didn't have prom, all these things that are very traditional to the especially the seniors, it went all out the window. This year, I have to tell you, with starting the school year, we had a couple of calls, and parents, there were some parents that weren't happy with some of the protocols, but everybody followed the directives. Wasn't the best situation, but they did, and that's the reason why we had a successful year so far. It's not because of really how we put things together. I mean, that was, I guess, the easier part. It's the cooperation from our staff and also our kids and our parents. And this could have been a mess. And it wasn't.
And you're spot on with all those comments, and I think everybody on the board would agree with all of them. The one observation I would make is we have made the best that we possibly could out of bad circumstances. But it was not without impact, right? We are an educational institution, and I think we need to talk a little bit about some of the experiences we may have with people who have been depressed and had other negative reactions to what's going on. So I would say that we did not achieve our goals, and making the best out of a bad situation is important, and everybody played a positive role in making that happen. But to allow people to achieve the most and get the most out of their experience at Riverside and the classes and everything else, we fell short. And it's not our fault. We did everything we possibly could. But going forward, we need to be in a situation where we allow the full capabilities of students to learn and teachers to interact, that we can. And frankly, the mask is a detriment. We talk about, it is absolutely admirable how everybody jumped through hoops and did a lot of things to make this year work as good as possible. But it didn't make it equivalent to what we could do in a regular school environment. And that's what I think we need to get back to. We're almost 18 months into this. And if we're going to get back to normal, it's what we have mitigated. I mean, we've done a lot of things. So there are new capabilities. The vaccine is there. So people are protected. We understand the coronavirus better. And looking forward to the fall, I think that we need to step off in as normal a footstep as possible.
Well, I think that was a lot of the point of the meeting tonight, right? So not so much being rid of masks with 22 days left. I think that's not realistic. I mean, we need to finish the school year the way we started it, get through the school year. But I did have a question from Mr. Graham when you made the comment regarding if there was a lot of data on mental health with in school age kids. Because I can tell you, I've got 3 children in the district, 2 in the high school, 1 in the middle school. And one of my children in the last week has had 2 friends who have, one vocalized her desire to commit suicide, another one that tried to over the weekend. It is an extremely serious, like the pandemic has caused a major epidemic among the teenagers. I have never in my life seen kids as literally mentally distraught as they are right now. And I do think a lot of it, in agreement with Mr. Hack, has to do with the masks, and not to blame Riverside or anything else, but I mean, these kids do not know how to live like this. This is not normal. Nothing about this is okay for them. I don't know if they know that it's because, I don't know if they know why they feel the way they feel, but it's terrifying what is happening with teenagers in particular right now. So I'm just really curious if we have any data on that, because I mean, I'm seeing it in my own household from kids that we care about that are struggling to live.
Yeah, we have all the Drug and Mental Health Services Board
carries that data. They care about the providers, what are 15 or so providers plus in Lake County. Certainly Crossroads, previously Crossroads has the most data. And so that's on our list to circle back on those. It's very hard to find. We know any additional stressor is what it is, it's an additional stressor. But to quantify that is becoming very hard, and you don't want it to be post-suicide when you start to look hard. So that's probably our number one concern is that, you know, people maybe perhaps lost scholarships, lost disinterest in sports. You know, how does that impact education, and how does that impact income, which is very downstream, but, you know, education and income are one of the primary drivers, if not the primary driver in good health of your community. And can we afford to lose 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? And there's no right answer. I mean, with the virus, there's no right answer, but we gotta do the best. And we can always monitor outbreaks. What's hard to monitor is the mental health situation of children, because it can stay hidden very, very long until it's too late or they're detrimental. So it's unforeseen collateral damage, and we gotta have those conversations like we do today to see what we do is best for everybody.
Well, I guess that was really, I think a lot of the point of this meeting tonight was how we don't want to start planning for next school year in August, but having conversations now about how we get our kids back to the most normal learning environment, whether it means if they're sitting at a desk and not moving, can they have a mask off, but in the hallway they need to have it on just to protect, because we're real kids, we know we walk through the hallways, close quarters and things like that, but how we get ourselves to that point so the kids can be learning at the very least without a mask on, because if we can't offer the virtual academy in the same way we did this year, and it's not gonna look like that, so the kids are gonna have no choice but to be in school, short of them enrolling out of district in a, you know.
That's why we had the best shields originally, because we couldn't guarantee that the students were going to be 6 feet apart. But it was also to allow the students to have mask breaks. And then we found that after the course of months, those shields just didn't hold up very well either.
But even that, they weren't even really getting mask breaks.
It depends, I guess, what classroom you're in, though.
Sure.
You know, some are a little bit more apt to give the
Without that, and when the weather was nice,
Right.
they were doing a lot more, you drive through and see them out on campus and things like that.
There's going to be a few things that may be different too. I mean, everyone knows the importance of having the kids in school and not learning remotely. You know, there are situations, certain things I can understand that, but generally speaking, kids are going to learn more being in school and the socialization as well. And right now, it's my understanding that we cannot offer the same type of program that we next year that we offered this year. And so we're going to have to read a few things. Kids are going to be back in the buildings.
There's no doubt, and, you know, for the parents that chose to put their parents in the remote learning as opposed to in person, not all of them were strictly because they didn't want to have their child necessarily exposed to the coronavirus. They didn't want them wearing a mask as well. So there's more than one population that decided to.
That represented 27% of our enrollment in the district as well. Maybe if you compare it to other Lake County schools, it was about the same. I know City had more. Their percent was a little bit higher. But it was around 25 to 28% from what I remember throughout the county. I think we ended up at 27 or 28%. That's the first semester.
Yeah, I would just add is one thing that we learned, and I'm sure you guys understand this, we introduced a lot of variables all at once: mask, hand washing, sanitizing our rooms differently, not going out to restaurants. That happened for like 12 months. Which one had the biggest, you know, they're all beneficial. Which is the biggest percentage? Which one would you let go of for whatever reason? If it's allergies or contact allergies to excessive cleaning supplies and cleaning protocols when you're primarily being tamped out, so that's not really a big contributor. And it's some, but not the big picture. So we're going to have to start making kind of compromises to get back to the world. And so this is something that's a stab in the dark, but again, which one has the worst repercussions, which of the solutions cause more damage or not. Otherwise, you're all in for everything. If you're all in for everything, you're all in forever. And I guess that's what, as a society, as a community, that's kind of what we're facing. Is this unprecedented times of I'm fearful can turn to permanence and how we navigate that. Again, we don't have the answers yet. But again, the discussions are before, and we have to, I think, give hope to the community. If not, we're going to be looking at more and more depression, more mental health issues, and God forbid, suicides. So I really, get a lot of criticism. I try to understand the business side, transition the public health side, and then some of these logistics. I'm not criticized for that for being a little different than maybe the health commissioners, but we did very, very well on that kind of leading the way in vaccination rates, 6-7% above the state, utilized differently, but we are being very, very effective. And again, that's something we've been meeting with fire chiefs, mayors and managers, schools every week for over a year now. And that's been hugely, I think, one of the key points of the county is willing to look at the data, challenge everybody, challenge ourselves, and really come up with the best plan for the county. I think this is one of those pieces that we're going to get through sector by sector, board by board.
Is there any, you know, because we're even quarantining now that everyone, a lot of people are getting the vaccination, and now students aren't, athletes aren't getting, don't have to quarantine automatically like they did before. You know, it shut down a lot of different sports programs in the winter. And I think the change has come because of the vaccination, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, is there any discussion revolving around vaccination and whether or not someone might have to wear, might be able to wear a mask or not wear a mask in the fall with students?
Not that far yet, just occurred guidance in the CDC issue too, like kind of diagrams, which so somewhat fearful of is already, one of the graphs is all red and orange again. We went through that with the governor's system.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble, sorry.
So CDC came out with kind of these two charts looking at mask usage. And one of them's like yellow and orange still, where you're never safe, it feels like. And if you're vaccinated, you're safe all the time, except if you're, you know, in a closed area. So I think that's going to be misleading to the public. But really nothing about fall. They're still kind of like in the now. And again, some of the data, we requested that the 7 indicators that we have currently for the alert system, there was supposed to be 10. They never got to 10. I've advocated for the last about month and a half that our vaccination rate needs to weigh in as the minimum, the 8th indicator that has not been addressed by the Department of Health. And again, so we're trying to do as much as we can to educate, walk through those discussions and see. But you will find out, I guarantee that every time there's more groups that are vaccinated, total 15, you're going to make a change by the state, just as we should, as those come through, those percentages increase.
Well, I guess some of it's interesting too. Mrs. Ford and I were one of the things, right, that, and the hand sanitizer and things like that, but I'd like to see us make sure we move forward with forever, right? I mean, she and I were talking about it, like, there has to be something to be said for these kids actually really washing their hands, using sanitizer, things like that. I mean, my daughter comes out of her competitive cheer gym and she holds people up in her hands and their feet, and in the past, how the hell did I let her eat food after having someone's hands in her feet in her hands, right? And now I'm like, you know what I mean? So some of these things really will, I hope, continue to make a positive impact. I mean, we had, you know, really sad with flu and things like that. So there are things that we certainly should absolutely keep in place moving forward. You know, these kids always should be washing their hands, for Christ's sake. They should be using hand sanitizer and things like that, but we probably weren't doing enough. So maybe it made us realize some more of what we should be doing. You know, I don't think we can ever get to the point where we get rid of everything. I think it's important that we have things like that, but I do believe that we need to try to find a way to get it so that our students can be in a learning environment that doesn't include a mask on their face while they're in the classroom, for sure.
He's out on the field all the time with the boys, with no mask, and, you know, to the same point, make sure you wash your hands when you're done, and things like that. I also have my kids tell me that they don't mind wearing a mask, so, you know, it's kind of back and forth, and I think we have to take that into consideration for that we represent the entire district, just not, you know, our families, but there's always an option as we move forward. If you still want to wear a mask, I think that's absolutely an option. So I do agree that we need to get back to a place where we can see each other's faces and each other's smiles, and you know, I still work from home right now, so it's amazing just even those Zoom calls, as much as I hate them when we're on camera. The other day somebody said something, they could tell by the look on my face, right, that I was like, really, what's the question, right? And I know that has to be difficult for our teachers, right? Like, you see their eyes, but are they really bringing in or learning or understanding what you're saying to them? So you can't see that now, but no, I'm absolutely in agreement that we need to figure out how to move forward.
Any comments or observations?
Well, I'm kind of like what Belinda said, that, you know, data and information can be twisted in many, many ways. I really don't see how a mask interferes with a child's learning when they're in person with their teacher. I can't buy that, because again, I think they're making eye contact, they're talking through their mask like we've been doing for months. And I think the fact that a child and the teacher's relationship, for safety reasons across the community, I think the mask is important. I just heard today, for example, the governor of Pennsylvania, by the end of the month, is taking away all the COVID things except for the mask. And the mask isn't coming off as a requirement until they have herd immunity of 70% in Pennsylvania. So I think that's a pretty smart decision for that person, and it speaks volumes in my eyes. Siding with Jen, I think that for this school year, we need to finish it out the way it is. Next year, we can be open and look at different things, but I don't really believe that a mask is a huge difference with regards to relationships in the classroom, other than when it was before the shots. Definitely not. Now, with the shots and where it might go from here, because they're talking about boosters and everything else, it's going to be hard to predict.
I don't know that it's so much the relationships necessarily sometimes too. I think it's the distraction of the mask. I think it's when it's extremely hot, the kids are thinking more about the mask on their face than potentially what their teachers are saying or what kind of things are going on in the classroom. I think it's more than the relationship, but again, I think that it's fair to say, I would hope we get to a point where we could allow that option. Like you said, when you get rid of the shields, you give the option, if you still want to have your child in a shield, use a shield. It doesn't stop anybody from doing anything.
I think this is an issue that you're never gonna get 100% agreement, right? You're never
No.
gonna get, it's a very divided issue. It's been a very divided issue from day one. You know, we've been going out to restaurants and sit down at a restaurant since it started, and I know I have people that I work with that have not been to a restaurant in over a year. So I'm not saying they're wrong, I don't think they're saying I'm wrong. It's two perspectives, right? And I think that's the big challenge, is that it's a wide, it's just so divided sometimes. So I think we make the best decisions we can, try to get everybody where they're comfortable, and again, they're not weird, there's options to make people comfortable, right?
I agree. I mean, I've been to Florida twice in the last 3 weeks. I was at Epcot and on an airplane twice in the last 3 weeks. I mean, and my God, you're sitting 6 inches from a stranger, right? On an airplane, right? My choice, right? I could have driven. I didn't. It would be terrible. So, does anyone have questions for Mr. Graham specifically as far as the health department or data or anything like that? Anything that you're looking for him to provide to us today?
I guess what I can provide to the board is we've been, like Mr. Graham said, we're meeting with our superintendent counterparts in Lake County and Geauga County, and also with the Geauga County Health Director, also Mr. Graham from Lake County. And every week they give us updates, they answer questions that we might have. As we're preparing for next year, I can update the board as much as I possibly can when things start to change. And then when we have to get down to the nitty-gritty in terms of making decisions for next year, obviously the board will be part of that process.
You and I asked Mr. Graham too. So a couple weeks ago, I know you had a phone call with a focus group from Riverside parents. I had actually helped get probably 10 of those parents on that call. And they were, I know, anywhere from parents to parents with kids in kindergarten. What kind of input did you get from families with kids in the district currently as far as what their stance was on how things are going to classrooms and all that?
Sorry, I know we had about 12 different parents on there. Most of them were, that group wanted to see masks removed. There's a couple of them that say they'd like to see it as optional. And so, again, this is something we're just trying to advance the policy, advance those discussions. So it's early on, we still do a focus group with the superintendents. We kind of do that officially every week. We did those parents, but you gotta have the parents that still, if there's no masks in school next year, you might want to keep your child home. Again, we're just balancing this. Like, we're going to lose kids in the classroom, which again, our board is feels very strongly that in-person learning is the best. The question is, Is that going to be with a mask, not with a mask? Optional, 3 feet, 6 feet, 6 inches. Those we're trying to go through that discussion, hear all the comments that we have from the individuals, look at the data. You know, we could wait till August, right? But you know, how's the prevention count of peer, right, something like that. We want to try to get as much information that we can, so parents can make a decision now, not in 2 weeks in August. And again, it's just very challenging to do that. So we're going to continue the focus groups. We're bringing some others next week. If we have another meeting, we'll have a board meeting. It may or may not be solved. If not, again, we'll keep working with our Board of Health and the state and all the partners. But again, we're trying to get a little bit tighter recommendation out to you guys so that the parents can really make an informed decision on what that is. Yeah.
Mr. Graham, could you talk a little bit about your board and how
Yeah.
it's you know, manned, if you will?
Yeah, so we have one of the largest boards of health in the state, primarily how we combined in 1986. But we have 14 members. Each of those are appointed from one individual from each city, 2 from the city of Minter, that's the largest populous city, and 3 from the townships and villages. Work through what's called a district advisory council. They nominate 3 to sit in that board. Then they decide on high-level policy. You know, we're going to set this money, we're going to do a policing program, we do the technical side, package everything together. So they're really the board. So I report to the Board of Health. When I'm not health commissioner, I'm the secretary of the Board of Health. That's the language mill or Ohio Revised Code. Very prestigious position, the secretary. We also have a medical director that's hired. He's an infectious disease specialist, Dr. Sasha Patel, with infectious disease associates down in the Akron area around there. And so we have this whole team to lean on. And again, he tries the best he can to help us. He's very open-minded. We've worked through a lot of things that were very functional things. Like, this is a little overkill. This is not what we need. Could not ask for a better physician to be open-minded and not just close the door at every stop. So it's been very, very good. So he weighs in, and again, we want to start getting some of the school input, some of the parent input, the community input. And again, we were getting more and more inquiries about where can the mask go. We told the governor that the governor said we gave a mask when we got vaccinated. We got vaccinated, and now the masks are here. And we joke about moving the finish line, moving the goalpost. And honestly, some of that's happened. You know, I was very upset when they could not do X, Y, Z, but you could open the fair, you know, 3,000 people in the stands, and everybody else had like 5. Risk is risk, you know, and so that really started us kind of looking down at the county commissioners or Board of Health. How do we work together to come up with what's best for Lake County and local control? We're probably one of the first counties that really pushed that limit a little bit to make the best decisions we could by having the Mineral Rocks Council a little bit longer than would have been intended by the governor. As we remove those opportunities, we made those access opportunities harder. Can't prove it. There's a lot more things going on in people's yards and the neighbors down basically with their kids. And by restricting all those opportunities, I can't prove it, but those numbers went up as part of the response to that. A lot of frustration. And now we have mass fatigue, you know, COVID fatigue, 12, 16 months. Those are real things, and we have to kind of put that into the equation. No matter what we did, we would be on the schools. I comment, congratulate Jim and the board. You guys are doing a stellar job of contact tracing. In fact, the schools are doing a better job than us because they knew the families. They knew the classroom seating, they could make judgment calls. So Mohammed and Tanya, you know, from the figure out faculty, did a great job of really cutting through that, seeing what the real risk was, and advising you guys accordingly. So if we are doing something different in fall, which I hope we are, you guys are really going to be working with us hand by hand to see is there anything negative coming out of those decisions that we made, be it suicides, something because of a mask or because of not wearing a mask. We're going to be on top of it as much as we can be in fall as well. So I think that's an important part, that changes have consequences, and these change those variables or multiple variables. We have to be on the assessment side, monitoring that, the surveillance side of it. And so if anything does start going left and center, we catch it as early as we can and prevent that.
It sounds like there's a terrific board and support within the health department in Lake County, and that's critical. I think that we have staff and people who are, you know, trying to balance things out. And just the one observation I would make is that that board is all appointed, and because they're, you know, as has been pointed out, they're, you know, you can find your expert of choice, I guess. I did choose this because it is the University of Minnesota, and I don't know if they have any bias or not, but the bottom line is, as we move forward, I think it would be great if elected boards had more say in how, you know, in what happened with regard to that. We do have some latitude, but it would be great if you know, perhaps the health board would recognize that as well. So I just say that.
Well, I think it's a good jumping off.